Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to season 2 of the Niqabi Diaries podcast, a platform dedicated to sharing the stories of the women behind the veil. This season, we will be speaking to more Muslim women from all walks of life as we continue to discuss their deep and intimate reasons for wearing the niqab. The Niqabi Diaries, our experiences, our perspectives, our voices. I'm your host, Samar, and thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sister, how are you?
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, sister, for joining us today on the Niqabi Diaries. Sister, could you introduce yourself for the listeners and tell us a little bit about what you do, inshallah?
Well, I am a certified breastfeeding counselor, and I'm also a trainee in childbirth education, AMANI Childbirth education. I basically work for the empowerment of women through education and through networking and socializing, helping them understand the right code of Islamic principles. So basically, it's just empowering them with a feeling of feeling good. I have my own projects, the Muslima Network, where through articles and through resource base, we try to help women in getting empowered. Even if they have go through our articles, they would feel a sense of belonging, and it will add value to their lives. So that's the project which I was doing since 2013, the Muslima Network. I have been involved in a few other projects as well before, uh, which is always connected to empowerment of women and young girls, so that they feel empowered even in their own homes when they are having their own set of responsibilities, so that they don't feel lower self-esteem or less accomplished. So they feel that they're doing something or involved in the community. So I'm basically involved in the community, trying to find out the problems and trying to be involved, and also see if I could build any solutions for them, just by being involved in the community or by hosting any gatherings or play groups or sessions for women and children. So that's my main purpose. I have also been a student of fifth and tafsir as well. Also a student of Arabic, just now enrolled in Arabic Ajurumia. So I try to keep myself busy with a lot of other activities, but right now, since I'm expecting, I've just taken a step back in just relaxing and spending time with my daughter. My daughter is 3 years now, and in around 2 months' time, I would be having another edition, inshallah.
Inshallah, may Allah grant you a healthy and righteous child. I mean, so sister, could you tell us a little bit about your Islamic background and how you started to wear the niqab?
Yeah, actually, there were some experiences in my life. I wasn't practicing before at all. I wasn't even to the extent that I wasn't, you can say, very keen on prayers also. So my hijab and my prayer, that knowledge aspect was very low. And there were experiences in my life that led me to start reading the Quran. First, it was started with the Quran, and where I started reading Surah Kahf, where I was in a situation that I needed to ask Allah for help, and I was totally alone at that time. That I just needed some guidance. So when I started reading the Quran with meaning, I came across this line: this wealth and the children are only the adornment of this world. So it kind of brought a curiosity in me, where I wanted to search for the meaning more and more, to delve into that meaning as to why is Allah saying this. And as I kept reading Surah Kahf, it was very intriguing for me, that line. What does it mean? And then I came across the meaning of hijab, and why the hijab is necessary for a woman, and or the prayers, the 5 daily prayers. So that's where I started with the 5 daily prayers, by being completely, you can say, strict on that, because and I came to know that it's obligatory and it cannot be left out. So I started with that. Then I came to know about the hijab. So it was like a slow progress, where I started with the hijab. I started just covering myself first, in my normal dresses with a scarf or a cloth or dupatta.
Yes.
Then I started with the abaya and the scarf. Then it slowly, just before my, I think 2 months or 3 months before my marriage, I wanted to actually cover with the niqab, but because in India we have these cultural issues, so it's like parents and the relatives, they'll be like, oh no, you won't be getting a lot of
Proposals.
proposals
Yeah,
or marriage and
subhanallah.
everything because of this. So I was like, okay, fine. What I used to do was, I used to put on the makeup,
Mm-hmm.
and then I used to tell my parents that, look, makeup is making me beautiful, so I cannot show the makeup to outside men. So I let me put on the niqab that time. So I used to
MashaAllah.
do that. And then it was like not very standard. It was on and off the niqab. So, but I wanted to make it a consistent practice. But then, Alhamdulillah, when I met my husband, he's also a practicing Muslim. So then there was no issue with me practicing niqab and anything of that sort, because he is also
Alhamdulillah.
a practicing Muslim. He knows the value of all of that. And since then, like 2016 onwards, properly after marriage, I started the full niqab.
Alhamdulillah.
And I
Alhamdulillah.
have been growing with you can say that the type of niqab where it's like, before it was a normal niqab where it was just, you have these different types where you have more
Yes.
covering of the eyes
Mm-hmm.
and more. So I wanted to progress in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought those types also. And basically, that's my story where I wanted to actually, when whatever I know as of a woman in Quran, they say that woman is um, it is a tendency that woman has to be covered. That's the main purpose, that if she's covered, the guidelines given in the Quran and the Sunnah regarding her cover and her modesty, and that how that modesty brings a value, even that I wanted to, through my projects and through my community work, I wanted to build that understanding between women, that okay, if you're a niqabi, it doesn't mean that you cannot do anything. You
Yes.
are at home, you still have a value, even as a mother. Even if you are there, you're going out, but that does not mean that if you become a niqabi, it's that you are just cut off from the world. You can
Mm-hmm.
still be involved in the community. So alhamdulillah, through that, I am known here in the community, that I was involved in volunteering projects and a few of help and charity projects and all of these things. Through that's I wanted to portray that, being a niqabi does not mean that you're just having of no value, or it's just a piece of cloth on your face. It does have a meaning. And then why we wear the niqab. So there were a few instances that where I have even told young girls about the niqab, and during the volunteering times, that why niqab is also a good, a sense of thing, because obviously it will give you more freedom to wear a makeup, and it will give you more freedom to um, be flexible in your dress code also,
Yes.
and you're not showing it outside to the non-mahram men. So this was my, you can say, a short journey to the niqab. But I that's what I kind of try to maintain that. uh,
MashaAllah, sister. So
uh
could I just ask you a little bit, just because obviously you mentioned that you wasn't practicing before, and if you don't mind, I'd like to dig a little bit deeper there, because maybe there's some sisters who are listening, for example, who aren't practicing, or they're just trying to get into, practicing the religion, because sometimes, like, it's one thing when we have stories of like convert Muslims or revert Muslims, but when there's
mm,
somebody from it coming from a Muslim background, there are so many Muslims in the community who come from Muslim backgrounds, but they haven't been raised practicing, or they just haven't been practicing Islam for whatever reason. So can you just kind of like give us a little bit more, like, what was it for you that kind of set you on that path? You said that you had needed something, but why specifically Surah Al-Kahf? How did you start off with that surah specifically?
Actually, that surah was recommended to me by my aunt, my dad's sister. I was
Right.
facing some personal problems in my life
Mm-hmm.
at that time, where I had to look out for direction. And even my parents, since they being cultural and traditional, they didn't have much advice to tell me about as to what I need to do. I had to make a few decisions in life that time, that it was in my personal thing, that I had to find a direction. At that point, it was only that Allah whom I could rely on and to ask for help, that what is a decision that I need to make, where do I need to turn to. And there was a source who had a guardian, a teacher who had advised me, actually, when he started advising me, saying that, this is what you need to do in your life. First, you need to know about your hijab. First, you need to know about your salah, and then you need to look out for solutions for your problems in your personal life. So that was bringing me. It was in a state where I had to uh, take the decision on my own. My
Mm-hmm.
parents also couldn't be there involved because it was a personal decision,
Mm-hmm.
and even asking them would be resulting in a cultural answer, which would not help me religiously. And
Right.
at that point, I felt I needed Allah more, and I needed that only if I could make Allah happy, that for me the solution would come up. That's when actually when I was even consulting my dad's people at that time, I remember that my aunt had told me that you start reading. Actually, it's not like a set. You can say that if you read Surah Kahf, you get a solution. But what just she told me was, just read Surah Kahf. Just start reading whenever you want. Like
Yes.
whenever you feel like you need help, you just start reading Surah Kahf. So what
Mm-hmm.
I used to do is I always used to take the Quran, the Surah Kahf, and read that only.
Mm-hmm.
And only that whenever I used to take up and read that line always used to
Stand
highlight
out.
for me in
Yeah.
front of me. Yeah. So that line kind of made me more curious as to what is Allah trying to tell me through that.
So
That's when I
how
started
old was you at
researching.
the time, sister?
Sorry, I was mm, 23, 23, 24.
Okay, okay, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So then, and how old is you when you started to wear the niqab?
Niqab was like 2016, meaning 5 years before.
Okay.
So yeah, it was around, I was 20, 30, I think, 30
Mm-hmm.
when I started practicing the niqab.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, so
Just
did you,
before my, just before my marriage, you can say, yeah,
right, okay,
2016.
okay, alhamdulillah. So did you have any issues with anybody in your family? Like, you did mention that obviously your parents didn't want you to kind of work full time because they wanted you to get married and stuff like that. But what about other family members? Was there anybody that kind of
No,
like,
no, no. They used to tell them on the phone, but
mhm,
they, for me directly, no one told me.
okay,
As in, I'm upfront on me, no one told me.
okay, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. And how would you say your experience has been since you started wearing the niqab in the community that you live in? Has there been any kind of abuse or anything like that?
No, Alhamdulillah, here the community, especially in UAE, it's more encouraging, and it's we are like we feel involved. There is nothing that we feel like we are an outsider at all.
Mm-hmm.
So actually,
Alhamdulillah.
I felt more better when I wear the niqab. I feel more free.
Alhamdulillah. So have you been living in the UAE like all the time, or is it somewhere you've just moved to within some years?
No, I've been in UAE since my birth. I
Okay,
was born in
alhamdulillah.
India, but
Right.
within 6 months, I was in UAE here since 1985.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So have you done any traveling wearing the niqab or anything like that and had an
Yeah,
experience?
yeah. So India, we have done with the traveling. We have traveled to India mostly only. So it's to India that we travel with the niqab. Yeah, no issues with that.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. And it's obviously like I'm going to ask you, would you describe the niqab as being a barrier, and if so, in which kind of sense?
Barrier for modesty, you can say, where you are more free.
Mm-hmm.
It's no other barrier in any other sense because it actually liberates you more, I believe, because you are more free to put the makeup on and dress up anyhow
Mm-hmm.
on your face, on the makeup, and then, and if I believe personally, it makes you more modest. You don't have to literally show out everything, every expression on your face, your beauty to someone else when you're outside,
Mm-hmm.
because your husband is there. And
Alhamdulillah.
that's the only thing. And like how it was advised that Prophet ﷺ's wives were completely covered and more modest, so it does bring you to that closer level. You feel that you are doing what they are doing. So obviously when you're doing something a higher authority or a higher, more respected person is doing, you also do feel that okay, you're on their path. So that
Alhamdulillah.
that right path, the sense of being on the right path, gives a more comfort, feeling of comfort and assurity that you are doing something right.
Mashallah. So,
I
sister,
usually used to feel conscious when I was not wearing niqab and showing my expressions out, because
yes.
I used to see that whenever I used to talk someone outside or smile, people used to turn, and I used to feel awkward. It's like, okay, now they're
Mm,
seeing me. So you don't need to show your always your identity. Can be your name. Your
mm-hmm,
identity can be your work. That's your identity. It doesn't need to be
definitely.
your face or your beauty or your expression. So that's what I believe. Your identity through your work and your skills is more important than uh, more than anything, any apparent thing seeing for a woman, I believe.
Alhamdulillah. So, I wanted to ask you about your work and how did you get involved with, you said you're a breastfeeding counselor. Um,
Yeah.
is that your main job? And what kind of, like, can you describe like what your main work is that you do on a like normally? Obviously, you said you're resting now because of, expecting a baby, but how did you get into your work? How did you get involved in that?
I just completed my breastfeeding counseling course, the training last year. So it's just been around 8 months to 10 months when I completed my certified breastfeeding counseling course from government here, from Sharjah government here itself. And also I just did my finished my training also at the same almost at the same time in childbirth education. So that was online, completely online, because since it was COVID time, instead of the physical classes, we had online classes. It was easier for me to actually handle my daughter as well as attend the online classes at that time. So we finished the breastfeeding course, and now I'm certified breastfeeding counselor. The main thing is that I help women in understanding their breastfeeding issues, especially new mothers who don't know whether their milk supply is fine or not, who have issues with the latching problems for babies and whose babies are not sleeping, whatever concerns they have with the baby, colic, reflux, to help them identify the problem basically,
Mm,
and suggest them to specialists or lactation consultants in their local areas, because we have a connection with the lactation consultants and other breastfeeding counselors, even in UAE as well as even in India. I know a few, so I connect them to them if they have any issues and if they need to more consult someone, because they have some myths and misconceptions regarding breastfeeding. Also, there are a
mm-hmm,
lot of myths and misconceptions pertaining to this, especially if it's a new mother. She would just go by whatever the doctor says, or whatever. She would get confused with the doctor's advice or with the family's advice. It would get mixed up, it would get messy, and the baby ends up still crying every time at night, and she would be in a worry, in a state of stress. So
mm,
that eventually what happens is, for her, she's facing a lot of issues from the external environmental side. If her baby is facing an issue but she's not able to solve the problem, she ends up in stress, and that eventually affects her milk supply, and she's not able to solve the problem and ends up into formula feeding. So it's
subhanallah.
like a kind of cycle. It's a vicious cycle, you can say. So we try to educate her about the importance of breastfeeding and what signs she needs to understand, as to when she needs to approach the doctor, or when she needs to approach a counselor to find out if it's a very sometimes it's a very small issue, but they think it's a very big issue, and then it goes into formula feeding again, where they go to the doctor and give the medicine, or the doctor says your milk supply is low. The
Mm,
biggest problem in all the new mothers, what they face is that they are told that their milk supply is low if their baby
yes,
is crying. So
yes.
we try to educate them on why the baby cries. There are so many other issues with the baby. The latch issues are there, tongue tie issues. So there are so many other scientific issues which they are not aware about,
Mm,
and we tell them as to what stage they would need to be considering for a formula. If all of the measures they have tried is not working, that's when that would come in between, but it would be always the first initial thing that they do with the formula feeding, that they would end up with the formula feeding,
yeah.
just a small thing, and then they would put the baby on the bottle. So it's basically educating them on this aspect, and also referring them to specialists. If their
Okay.
issue is a bit more, we
Mm-hmm.
refer them to lactation consultants. So that is the role of the breastfeeding counselor. We try to
Mashallah.
counsel them or help them emotionally also with their situation. We try to attend them. So that is the kind of services we offer, and it's also online and locally. And also as a childbirth educator, I'm still doing the training, so where still I haven't certified in that. But
Mm-hmm.
once certified, it would be that I would be having face to face or online sessions with mothers who want to prepare for pregnancy and a healthy pregnancy and birth, and also possibility of attending their birth and
Yes.
helping them in the labor
So
progress.
is that like being a doula?
Yes, that is also, you can certify as a childbirth educator as well as a doula.
Okay, okay, all right then. So there is a difference between the two then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Childbirth education is only where you are attending the mother and you're helping her out with all the pregnancy preparation, but doula would be being with her and attending her during the full labor progress.
Okay, okay, alhamdulillah. So what would you recommend? For example, there's a young mother for she's a first time mother, she's breastfeeding and her baby's like around the age of 6 months now, where usually this is the age where foods are starting to be introduced. Like what kind of advice would you give a young mother like that, and she's having issues with, for example, the child is still not sleeping throughout the night and wakes up a lot and seems to constantly still want milk?
Hmm. This is a very common issue actually. And now at the age of 6 months, first thing I would say, I would tell her is to identify if a baby is ready for solids,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a time that you need to identify if your baby is ready for solid. That is, if your baby is able to sit well, even with
Yes.
support, they are able to sit for some time,
Yes.
and then they're showing interest in the food, and they have a few set of teeth.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't have teeth at 6 months, but they're sitting, it's not yet very close time to give them solids. You
Mm-hmm.
needed to wait at least for a month, at least, and
Mm-hmm.
see if they're getting teeth. Because
Mm-hmm.
some babies don't get teeth at 6 or 7 months.
Yes.
So it's better off delaying starting solids, because the solids, even it's not like there is no standard that you need to start solids at 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's only because that you are just preparing them to get a start of different tastes.
Yes.
That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, if they need to have a taste of different solids, you can just offer them that you get this with the net or a gauge, that they get these little juice they can taste the juice of different fruits or something. They can just taste that. But to actually begin solids with them, is you need to be sure that they're ready,
Yes.
they're sitting upright, and they're having all the interest, and they're showing all the signs that a baby shows, with a set of teeth and the interest and the kind of activities that they're doing, that they're always more upright than lying down.
Mm-hmm.
Will give them an that's a signal that they can start solids. And solids also, it's only a complementary
Yes.
thing at that time, just maybe
Okay.
hardly 1 or 2 times a day, because the main source of nutrition till at least 1 year is breast milk. That's what we
Mm.
would give the advice to that mother first. Now if
Okay.
now that baby is having issues with a lot of crying at night, now at 6 months there is something called growth spurt. The growth spurt for the baby is there at 3 months, at 6 months, at 1 year, and it goes on like that. Every 3 months
Okay.
or every 4 months, the baby has a growth spurt. So
Mm-hmm.
the possibility that the baby keeps crying at night is probably, one is growth spurt, one is because for the growth spurt the baby will want to feed continuously at night.
Right.
They
Okay.
won't feed. Then there is something called cluster feeding. Cluster feeding is also because also possibility of the growth spurt, that they want to keep feeding continuously, or if they are having a blocked nose, or if they are having some irritation in the tummy, so that time they would cluster feed. That is just for a comfort, they would want to feed, they feel better. So if they don't get the feed at night, they would cry. So you need to identify whether it's the growth spurt. If they're not having any colic issues or
Right.
reflux or blocked nose, then it's the growth spurt, obviously, and they don't have
Okay.
any other issue.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's only at night, and it's usually the cluster feeding that happens.
Right.
Only if it is the night time that they're crying and they're not having any other issue, it's the cluster feeding. That pattern comes and goes actually for the babies. We cannot solve that unless they are themselves ready to leave it. So it's a phase, you can say, that you need to go through, and there is
Okay.
no medicine for it. The cluster
Alhamdulillah.
feeding and the growth spurt, yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So, what about the mother then? Because, like, what can happen is that obviously it can affect her. Like, for example, the breast can become very sore from continuous feeding. So, what advice would you give to the mother from her side, and what can she do to help improve the quality of her milk as well?
Okay, the sore breasts actually won't happen if the baby is latching well in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, even if it is sore, it won't be so painful. But if she is getting a lot of pain during the feeding times where the baby is feeding a lot, and if the
Mm-hmm.
pain is too much, then that means there is a slight latch problem which needs to be corrected,
Mm-hmm.
where the baby is not latching onto the breast well. Soreness is pretty common, but that soreness would go away
Mm-hmm.
fast. she wouldn't feel continuous pain. Like it would be just there for when the baby is feeding, and after some time she wouldn't feel that much. But if
Yes.
the pain is there, or if it's a stinging pain, if it's a pinching kind of pain, and if it's not bearable when the baby is feeding, and then the pain is not there when the baby is not feeding, then there is a large problem. So it needs to be corrected. To see actually, the breastfeeding counselor or the lactation consultant needs to see how the baby is feeding.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then give them a guideline as to what is the position and the correct, or change the position of the feeding, or see how, because that needs to be seen face to face, and then correct the position of the baby
Okay.
while feeding on the breast. So that's the way the soreness can be reduced. And what was your other question?
About the milk, like how can she improve her milk flow?
Yeah. Now, if for because of the soreness or because of the pain, the mother is not feeding the baby on demand, then there's a probability that the milk supply can be reduced.
Mm-hmm.
So, to in order to reduce that, what she can do is, till she's trying to sort that issue out. Also, she is massaging her breasts before the feed of the baby,
Yes.
and she is relaxed. She's eating well at on time as her hunger is there. She needs to be relaxed. She needs not to be stressed. And then she is mm, for the soreness also, sometimes applying breast milk helps, if
Really?
it is just a very mild. Yeah, for any pain, for even for any cut also, if you
Okay.
apply the breast milk is has antibodies, antibiotics. It has
Subhanallah.
so many beneficial organisms inside the breast milk, that
Mm-hmm.
it will heal even the gut system of the baby. And even if the baby is having a blocked nose, put the breast milk in the baby's nose and then start the feed. The breast milk will
Subhanallah.
clear up the nose also. Yeah, for
Subhanallah.
anything.
Wow.
Even till 6 months or 1 year, whatever the issue is there, the best medicine is the breast milk, especially for the blocked nose. I used it for my daughter, for my own lactation consultant. She had
Yes.
advised me, any problem with your daughter, put the breast milk in the nose. For the blocked nose, it'll clear off. And even if she's having like fever or sore throat, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
just keep feeding breast milk, nothing
Yes.
else.
Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and even if it like there are, I have seen remedies where if the mother has a pimple, I just put the breast milk drop on, then the pimple goes away.
Subhanallah.
So
Wow.
these are the properties the breast milk has, and very beneficial. So the main thing is like not to reduce the milk supply for the mom. Is she needs not to be getting stressed often, and she needs to understand, like when she starts understanding that the baby is not always crying because of colic, or the baby is not getting milk, because that is the first thing that mothers and the doctors, they say that, if your baby is crying, then they're not having enough milk. But the main
Yeah.
sign for the milk, the baby is getting enough milk, is they're gaining weight well, or they're having enough wet diapers in a day,
Okay.
5 to 6 wet diapers in a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough. If they're getting enough wet diapers in a day, they're having enough milk.
Alhamdulillah.
The crying would be another reason, cluster feeding, or blocked nose, or maybe mostly a growth spurt. It's mostly a growth spurt till the age of 6 to 8 months, that they keep having growth spurts sometimes every 2 to 3 weeks. So they will feed more continuously. And the best thing is to feed the baby on demand, not at specific two
Specified
to three
times.
hour
Yeah.
gap.
Okay.
Yeah, as a doctor advises. It's just that whenever they're feeding well is fine, and making sure that the baby is not sleeping in a day
Mm-hmm.
at a more stretch of 5 hours. Like if they're sleeping for more than 5 hours in a day, then they need to be woken up and then given the feed.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's fine. They can sleep up to 5 hours at a stretch without feeding. It's okay once in a day.
Okay, mashallah. That's really interesting. Because I think now there's like people even use like things like apps on their phones to like, record the times that they've been feeding their child, for example, and they're trying to like feed according to what the app is telling them. So obviously like that
Mm.
could interfere with what the needs
Yes,
of
it
the
will.
child, isn't it?
Yeah. The main thing is like if you have a baby, just do what the baby says.
Okay.
That's
Mashallah.
it. That's the best thing for the healthy baby growth, and for them to bond with you once they grow up. And that cry it out, and they have these concepts called crying it out, and let the baby cry it out, they'll get used to it. Not, there's nothing of that sort, because it makes the baby's hormones go upside down and makes them more aggressive once they grow up. So it's like crying is only because for a reason, for a baby, either the baby needs her mom, or they're sleepy, or they're hungry. So do one of those things. It's only that. So the cry it out method also, these are all big misconceptions which does often cause the personality problems later on with the babies. They become more insecure when they leave the baby to cry it out.
Subhanallah.
The baby crying it out is not healthy because it sends out these, for them, the adrenaline and the cortisol signals, that it creates a wrong set of hormones in the baby where they start crying too much, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's they say that let the baby cry and they will get used to it, but it's only because of the reason that the baby wants the mother for some reason, either for feeding or for sleeping. So
Right.
whenever the baby is crying in the initial stage itself, pick up the baby and hold the baby. And
Okay.
even only in the initial stage itself, if they are picked up and held, they would feed well also, otherwise they won't feed well.
Okay. Okay. Subhanallah.
They
So
would
it's
go into a very aggressive stage where they wouldn't feed.
so basically, if you leave if the child is crying and it wants the mother
Mm.
and it doesn't have the mother for a long period, that affects the feeding, the child being able to feed correctly later. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
yes, yeah.
Subhanallah.
Because they would go into a fit of rage, and when if you have seen the baby crying for a very long time, they
Yeah.
would just cry, 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 cry,
Mm,
cry. They wouldn't feed well, and by the time they would feed, they would be tired also, and they would
yeah.
go to sleep. It would be like that. Never let the baby cry it out, because it's a natural call of the baby to for the mother to be on their side.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. That's really a lot of beneficial information there. So inshallah, if there's any young mothers or new mothers listening, then they can benefit, inshallah.
Sure, sure,
Barakallah feek.
inshallah. And I do provide services online also.
Okay,
So anywhere
excellent.
around the world, no issues.
Alhamdulillah. So inshallah we can include your contact details in the description box for
Sure, inshallah.
other sisters, inshallah. MashaAllah. So yeah, back to the topic of the niqab and hijab
Yeah.
as well. Actually, I wanted to ask you, sister, do you feel that there's a difference in the treatment of sisters who wear the niqab and sisters who wear the hijab?
Where in here in my place?
Yeah, well, just in your experience in
No,
general.
no different treatment. We are treated all same here, especially in the UAE, since it's a Muslim country.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any issues with the niqabs separately as a hijab.
Alhamdulillah.
So we are all treated the same. That's no issues.
Alhamdulillah. And have you met any sisters who would like to wear the niqab, for example, but they aren't allowed to wear it? Or have you met sisters on the reverse side, for example, who have been forced into wearing the niqab?
Right now, no, I don't have any sisters whom I know that they want to, they're not able to, but I already know all mothers who are already practicing, and they are some are hijabi and some are niqabi.
Mm-hmm.
Matlab, they have already started. There's no
Alhamdulillah.
issues that they're facing right now.
Alhamdulillah.
And
Alhamdulillah.
when I was not married, when I was doing my volunteering, I met a lot of sisters, a lot of young girls at that time,
Mm-hmm.
college girls and girls who are about to get married, that they want to start the niqab and they have issues, or they're not having a supportive environment that they can start. So that time I used to meet a lot. Now, after so many years, no, alhamdulillah, I'm not meeting any of them right now like that.
Alhamdulillah. And what kind of advice would you give to those sisters who want to wear the niqab but they don't feel confident to wear it?
For them, let them take it slow and see, because even especially since it's a niqab issue, it's there is an issue with like an understanding that if that's obligatory or not. So as much as possible, they try to talk it out with their family and their parents that they are interested in this, and then how they would benefit from it, and what reward it carries, what reward Allah gives when they wear the niqab.
Mm-hmm.
So they try to communicate as much as possible that they wish to do it, but not try to enforce it immediately if it is not accepted by their family, or if they're being opposed. Like, not to act as if that they are trying to, what do you call, and be aggressive about it.
Yeah.
They need to take it slow and try to like what I used to do is that sometimes I put on my makeup and I tell my parents that, look, I have a makeup on right now, so allow me to wear the niqab now. So then they are
Alhamdulillah.
like, okay. So it's like that.
Alhamdulillah.
When they want to go into a gathering or something, they can try, or when they're going out alone, then they can seek permission at that time. So it's slowly a gradual progress. So, and pray, keep making dua to Allah that they get a supportive partner will allow them to wear the niqab and support them in that. So that's the only thing. I don't think much of it is needed, because uh, this will happen eventually if they are consistent in their intention.
Yes, definitely. Alhamdulillah. So, sister, you mentioned you have you write, you've got a Muslim network. What's that about?
Yeah. It's basically an article base.
Mm-hmm.
It's all articles and resources on the website for women and for young girls. It's all the resources we provide. Even there, the resources are there for pregnancy and for breastfeeding.
Okay. So it's
Pregnancy
like
and
a quite a general website then. So
yeah,
is it
it's a
not
general website, but
specifically
for women.
things to do with like Islam particularly, but just in
It is.
general?
It is. All the articles are Islamic based
Okay.
and Islamic principle based. So it's just that they can go and browse, and we have the resources on breastfeeding as well. Then we have resources on homeschooling. So I'm trying to develop resources, more resources on that, and also trying to develop some courses as well. So still in the, you can say, working stages and reforming stages. It's still going on at the back.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
We are planning to have a good set of resources so that women can rely on the website for all their needs, basically for homeschooling, for pregnancy, for women's support, for breastfeeding, on all these areas.
Okay, inshallah. MashaAllah, that's it's really, really good. So inshallah, we'll put another link for that as well in the description box so that sisters
Inshallah.
can get access. Barakallahu feekum. So
Inshallah.
sister, to end the interview, I'll ask you, what does the niqab mean to you?
Niqab is my identity. It's uh, it's just my pride, you can say, because for me, niqab is something which, as a Muslim woman, uh, it increases my iman and helps me develop more as a Muslim woman, being closer to Allah, who wants to work on the path of the Sahabiyat and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Salam.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, sister. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair for the interview, and it's very interesting. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah
Alhamdulillah,
khair.
alhamdulillah. It's been really great talking to you, and it's nice to talk to somebody with your kind of experience as well. I think it's my first time actually talking to a sister who's
Okay.
birthing expert. So yeah, mashallah, it's yeah,
Okay.
really
Inshallah.
beneficial. Jazakallah khair, sister. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Thank you so much for
wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.